Let's listen to John Gross, lead engineer of NIST, tell us about the molten metal from his perspective.
First of all, let's go back to your basic premise that there was a pool of molten steel. I know of absolutely nobody, no eyewitness who said so, nobody who's produced it.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails. Like you're in a foundry.
Yeah, like lava.
Like it was
Like
lava
lava.
from a volcano.
No eyewitness who said so.
There are actually melted beams where it was molten steel that was being dug out.
No eyewitness who said so.
Underground, it was still so hot that molten metal dripped down the sides of a wall.
No eyewitness who said so.
And the cleanup was very difficult. The steel was coming out red in certain areas from the first couple of weeks at least.
No eyewitness who said so.
As of 21 days after the attack, the fires were still burning and molten steel was still running, says World Trade Center structural engineer Leslie Robertson.
No eyewitness who said so.
Saw pools of literally molten steel.
No eyewitness who said so.
And this structural engineer, Abu Hazanastani from Berkeley, cites and documents, I saw melting of girders in the World Trade Center.
Nobody who's produced it.
This fused element of steel, molten steel.
Nobody who's produced it. Nobody who's produced it. Nobody who's produced it. Nobody who's produced it. Nobody who's produced it.
NASA pictures, thermal images showed those sorts of temperatures in the basement.
What is the problem here? Somebody's lying. I'm going to leave it up to you to make your own conclusions.
Now at this point, I noticed in the building, I was looking at the fire and the flames, and this is something I really want to underline. I saw long streams of molten metal coming out of the building, and they were not coming from the area where the impact was. So there was a large black circle where something had blown up there, and that part clearly was caused by whatever had detonated inside the building. But there were places where there was no damage to the building, but there was molten metal coming out, just like the stream from a welder's torch. But it was much longer. These streams were probably 2 or 3 stories in length, so maybe 20 meters, and they would go out into sparks and spread out as they went towards the ground. But I distinctly remember standing there going, what the hell are those streams of metal coming out? That is like nothing I've ever seen. That's not fire. That's not smoke. That is something hot enough to glow, bright orange, and it's coming out in a stream. And there are probably at least 3 different places that it was coming out from the corners. So I remember thinking, has somebody got a blowtorch up there? Like, what is going on with this building? This is the strangest thing I've ever seen. The explosion, okay, I know that there was a terrorist attack on the building before. I bet that's what's happened this time. But the molten metal, I don't know what that is. So I was standing there looking at it. Then I started to think, well, maybe I should continue on to try and get to the World Financial Center. I knew that some incident had happened, but I also felt that there wasn't anything I could immediately do to help. And maybe I should just try and get on with my day as best I could. So at that particular moment, I was trying to figure out what to do. Maybe I was starting to be in shock, I don't know, but that was my state of mind at the time. So I knew I couldn't go down Fulton Street because that was just a wreck. There was debris everywhere. So I went the opposite way, around the corner of the main building where Merrill Lynch is, and then I was going to go up the adjacent street, so the one parallel to Fulton. I passed a friend of mine that ran a computer store there. Now I remember him looking at me like straight in the eye for 5 or 10 seconds as I walked past, and I'm not quite sure what sort of communication there was there, but he was looking right at me like something, I'm not sure what it meant, but it was though we were realizing that we were in some kind of a moment here and we were staring at each other like something big was happening.
Sir, I'm not a fireman. I'm just telling these guys where to go. Just stay where you are. If you got to break a window, break a window.
This fused element of of steel, molten steel and concrete and all of these things all fused by the heat into one single element.
And almost like a chunk of lava from Kilauea or Iceland, where they're very sharp but breakable shards on the end here.
This 8-ton steel I-beam is 6 inches thick. It was selected to be preserved for future generations for the near-perfect horseshoe-like bend formed during the collapse.
I found it hard to believe that it actually bent because of the size of it and how there's no cracks in the iron. It bent without almost a single crack in it. It takes thousands of degrees to bend steel like this.
Typically you'd have buckling and tearing on the tension side, but there's no buckling at all.
Bent like a pretzel. And you just couldn't imagine the force that took. The grapplers were pulling stuff out, big sections of iron that were literally on fire on the other end. They would hit the air and burst into flames, which was pretty spooky to see.
There was even a point where you would create an air pocket by moving steel, fueling the fires underground, would ignite cars and cars would just blow up. But, you know, these underground fires were just like the fires of hell.
Underground, it was still so hot that molten metal dripped down the sides of a wall from Building 6.
There were fires of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit below the ground.
This is how it's been since day one. Oh, it's unbelievable. And this is 6 weeks later, almost 6 weeks later. And as we get closer to the center of this, it gets hotter and hotter. It's probably 1,500 degrees. We've had some small windows into what we thought was a core at some point, and it looked like an oven. You know, it was just roaring inside. And it just had a bright reddish orange color. See that stuff he's pulling out? What was that shit? We're gonna hold off on the water. See the stuff he's pulling out? Yeah. It's red hot. If we hit it too much steam, you won't be able to see what he's doing. Great.
You see how this debris is still smoking? That's from the fires that are still burning. 8 weeks later, we still got fires burning. Every now and then, one of the pieces of equipment will dig in, they'll open up a small area, the oxygen will rush in, and you'll get this plume of brown, black smoke coming up. That's because that fire just got more oxygen. So, I mean, these things are burning. At one point, I think they were about 2,800 degrees.
Go back to your basic premise that there was a pool of molten steel. I know of absolutely nobody, no eyewitness who said so, nobody who's produced it. I was on the site, I was on the steel yards, so I don't know that that's so.
There's video of it.
Around 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. I think it's probably pretty difficult to get that kind of temperatures in a fire. So I don't know the basis. I can't address your question if I don't know the basis.
Well, NASA pictures, thermal images showed those sorts of temperatures in the basement.
Would you send them to me?
Okay.
My name is Mark, and I'm the individual who was questioning Dr. Gross, and he asked me to email to him those thermal images. When I approached him after his talk to get his email address for that purpose, he refused to provide it to me. I think this is important because it reveals the attitude of the NIST investigators, which is one of willful ignorance of what really happened on 9/11.